Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Greetings, forward thinkers, curious cats and idle ponderers. Welcome to your weekly dose of enlightenment. It's time for Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. And in today's episode, we're diving into the future with a quick somersault. Smart glasses were a clever idea on paper 12 years ago, but nothing really came of them. Now they're making a comeback after their false start, and we'll reveal the ingredient that was missing before. Now for the EV hesitant, there's a new development that has made them even more enticing. Perhaps now you'll make that leap of faith if you haven't already. And there's been some significant progress in the world of robotics. We have 3 stories that will absolutely astound and amaze you. And here to tell us all about it, sitting opposite me with a fistful of news from the future, it's the guy who does stuff and knows things. It's Matthew Dickerson. How are you, Matt?
Oh, good, thanks. Very good. Actually, I've been having a great time over the weekend. I've got a couple of my kids home, and the way I discover the latest games available to people is basically when the kids come home. So we sit around and play a few games.
An awesome time.
Awesome time. And some of those are good old-fashioned board games, physical board games. I know that sounds a bit old-fashioned for a technology segment, but mostly they're games that you play sitting around the lounge room and play in various ways. But I've discovered one, and it's a bit old. It's been out there for about 8 years now, so I'm a bit out of date with this one, but Pico Park. And the reason I like that is it's a bit like that old game called Lemmings. Remember Lemmings?
Oh, yeah.
And I used to love Lemmings because it was a problem-solving game that relied on a little bit of coordination, but a lot more thinking, and I really like that concept. So love Lemmings.
Solving,
yeah, that's right. And so Pico Park, we played a few different games, most of which my children were smashing me at because it relied on a bit more practice and coordination, and they were better than me. But with Pico Park, suddenly I went, hold on, this is a game where you've got to think about things. You've got to actually go through and solve problems and work out ways to get through things. Now, I was at a slight disadvantage because my son in particular had played most of the levels that we were playing, so that makes it a bit tougher. But
bit of catch-up time.
Bit of catch-up, but I think the idea of a game where you've got to think, not just rely on repetition, doing it over and over and over, or just straight reflexes, because as we get a bit older, they start to
There's no way we can win those games.
Exactly, that's right. But yeah, ones with thinking. So Pico Park, P-I-C-O Park, not that we give games recommendations here very often, but I do like the concept of Pico Park. I've got a bit more playing to do after we finish the podcast.
Get in with lots of fun.
Yeah, that's right. Only got halfway through there.
And highly addictive.
Of course. I don't know many games that aren't, any good games anyway, that aren't, you start playing, I'll just go and do that one more time. I'll just go to the next level. I'll just see what I can do if I can get that a bit better. Yeah. So I think that's the idea,
5
isn't
more
it?
minutes is all I need.
That's it, 3 hours later. Anyway, Pico Park, highly recommend it.
Excellent. All right, folks, enough with the delay. Let's get stuck in. Now, are you an avid puzzler? Does nutting out the brain teasers in the daily paper bring a sense of satisfaction like no other? Or is it just like the patterns in things to seek order amongst the chaos? Well, there's a puzzle challenge afoot with $1 million at stake, folks. And to look at it, you'd think that's pretty easy money. But here's the catch, folks. There's always a catch. To claim the prize in this one, you have to be AI. Matt. You have to be AI.
You have to be AI. So this afternoon, after we finish here, maybe we could do a little bit of Pico Parking, or we could do a little bit of AI problem solving. And this is the thing that AI isn't good at, hence the $1 million prize fund, to try and get someone who can create AI that's a bit better.
So what does a puzzle look like then?
Well, the puzzle's very simple. I looked at some of the puzzles themselves, and the tests that you see that are the abstract thinking puzzles that are a range of colours, and you've got to rearrange that to look like this picture over here. What do you need to do? Do you need to invert it? Do you need to flip it? You need to rotate it? That type of thing. So it looked like some puzzles that typically they said teenagers would get 85% of these puzzles. So they don't sound incredibly difficult in terms of the puzzle themselves. Even primary school kids, they said most primary school kids, so the majority of primary school kids will be able to solve most of these puzzles. So you go, AI, do it on its head.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. AI is very good, and computers in general are very good at remembering stuff.
Yeah.
We aren't. Our memory fades. Our memory is a bit different. You and I will see the same event on a footy field and we'll go, what about that? No, I didn't see that. I saw this happen, depending on what team we're following probably.
Yeah.
But we aren't great with exact memory, and we aren't great with long-term memory. It slowly fades away till it
Long-term
becomes...
memory is really just remembering the memory.
Yeah.
And then remembering the memory of the memory.
That's right.
And it's a Chinese whisper happening in your own head.
Perfect. Yes, that's a great description. I often say it's like a photocopy that does over and over, but I like the Chinese whisper better. I'll steal that, thanks. And so that's the thing with AI. It can remember things really well, and it knows they're going to be accurate, they're going to be the same. But if you say, now use that information to solve a problem, to be creative, to have something different thrown at it, all AI can do is look at a huge data set of previous problems or previous information and say, based on all this, here's the answer. But if it's something new, that's where AI goes, oh, I don't know about that because I haven't seen it before. Yeah. That's where humans are very clever. We go, well, based on this, this and that,
I can apply my learning from the past and change that around. And okay.
And then I come up with a creative, innovative solution.
Yeah.
So this is the challenge. They basically put out a challenge and there's some specific rules around it. It's got to be able to solve the problems within 12 hours. Doesn't sound like that's that difficult. Like 12 hours is a long time. Kids that solve these problems solve them in 10 or 15 minutes. So 12 hours, fair amount of time. You can't have a supercomputer to do it. So you can't use brute force just to go and try a random bunch of solutions till finally it gets one right. It's actually got to solve the problem. And you've got to have, it's all got to be offline. So in other words, you can't be relying on what else is happening out there on the internet. So you've got to basically take it offline. First prize in this is $500,000 and you've got to score 85%. And that's 1% higher than the average human score. So when humans are given these tests, 84% they get.
So it's for people who are designing AI engines, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So, and I did say that to my son home who has a computer science degree. I said, so do you want to play with AI this weekend and do this problem solving? And he said, oh, I think I'd just rather play Pico Park. So, so it is designed for people that are designing.
Really want to have to think too much.
That's right. So the whole concept is put together by someone from a company called Zapier and someone from Google. And basically they've got this thing called an ARC test, an abstract and reasoning corpus, so ARC test. And go through and do that, solve that, and you can stick $500,000. I don't know what the other $500,000 is for. Maybe the second and third for people that get it almost right or take a bit longer.
Slower,
that's right. Yours is a bit slower, but total $1 million prize pool there.
Yeah, right.
And often when you see companies do this, they're probably putting it out there for a bit of publicity and they're not expecting to hand out the money. So the challenge is out there. If you're into AI, go and take the money off them.
Maybe this is like some of those movies from the 80s and stuff where someone solves this problem and they go, right, this is the person we need to solve this bigger problem.
That's right. Or now we've got that problem solved, we own the copyright to that solution. So away we go. But it sounds quite fascinating. But there is hope there for us, James. When the AI overlords take over, then they might need some humans that can think differently. And so if we put ourselves in that category, then we're okay, I think, at this stage.
Or at least if the AI overlords take over, maybe I just have a really simple picture puzzle on the front door, which is the key to get through the door to my doomsday bunker.
Break through this and you can come in and, you couldn't get it. Fantastic.
Now for the deep sleepers out there, here's a gadget that'll get you up and at 'em with no excuses whatsoever. For those of you who are really, really, really paranoid about sleeping in and missing that flight, then Matt has an alarm clock that'll wake you up and get you milking those cows with 1,000% surety, Matt.
I don't like to talk too much about specific products, individual products you can go and buy. Often we talk about the future, but this one grabbed my attention because we talk about innovation a lot. We talk about why things are created, and there's lots of things that are created through necessity. And I suppose if we look at technology over the eons, you've got things like the wheel or maybe medical devices. You've got lots of things that were created because there was a desperate need for it and they're solving a big problem. You've got other things that not so much. And the smartphone is probably one of those where we were happy with a camera. We're happy with a device to pick up and ring someone. We're happy with getting on a computer and looking up things on the internet. We didn't know we needed one device that did all those things that we could carry in our pocket. But once we got it, we go, wow, fantastic.
How did we live without it?
How did we live without it? And so it didn't really solve a problem per se. It gave us a solution to a problem we didn't know we had as such. And there are some ones like that I find fascinating. They create an entire category, if you like, through that. So that's pretty cool. And I think this alarm clock has basically created its own category. It's an alarm clock. Well, I suppose two things. It could either be an alarm clock for deep sleepers, people that really need to get up for some important meeting, or it could be an alarm clock for people that have got some hearing impairment that don't wake up to a normal alarm clock. It's got three main features, a bunch of other features as well. But the first of the three main features is an alarm, something that makes a noise, but not just a noise, 113 decibels.
So it'll get you up and it'll get the neighbours from down the block up as well.
I think the entire town will be awake at this. And that's probably the equivalent of maybe a chainsaw beside your bed, probably even getting to the stage of maybe not right beside a jet plane, but maybe a propeller plane
Set
pretty
of
close.
bagpipes,
Set of bagpipes right in your ear. So I don't know I'd recommend having this clock too close to the bed. And I normally recommend this anyway. If you have to get up, put it 3 metres away from the bed so that when it goes off, you've got to get out of bed. This thing here, you'll be jumping out of bed, running across to it, hitting it to turn it off.
For the better part, it's not necessarily about the volume of the alarm. It's the fact that it's still going and you've got to get up to get out.
That's right. It's just
so a really loud alarm that's close to your bed can still be switched off.
It could be still switched off, that's right. Further away, you've got to get up. But you might need it close to your bed because it comes with a second feature called the Super Shaker. It's a little pad you can put down, depending on how sensitive you are, between your bed and your base, or maybe just under your sheets, or maybe under your pillow. And as the name suggests, it's a bit obvious, it just vibrates. So you're laying there in a peaceful slumber, and the next thing you know, your bed feels like there's an earthquake going on.
Yeah,
that's right.
Okay.
So you've got an earthquake, you've got a chainsaw and an earthquake going on. That may not be enough. You'd think it might be for most people, but you've got a light
Something
show.
comes and grabs your toe and twists.
Maybe that's a good idea as well. Don't suggest that might happen. But you've also got strobe lights built into this.
Oh,
so you've got a super bright LED strobe light show. Obviously, be careful.
This alarm clock's actually a practical joke, isn't it?
It seems like it. I bought you something for Christmas, James. So if you've obviously got any sensitivity to flashing lights, don't buy this alarm clock. But by the time the strobe light goes off, the shaking bed, the chainsaw beside your bed.
If you're sleeping through that, there's a whole lot of angry neighbours who are not going to let you sleep. That's the fourth way of, the
neighbours knock on the door. I think you're thinking about the partner in bed with you might kick you out of bed, but yeah, you go to the neighbours. What the heck? They'd be seeing lights flashing out the front window. They'd be hearing they probably wouldn't see the vibration or feel the vibration. Maybe they would. Maybe they'd go, the whole neighbourhood's shaking here. So this is serious about getting a bunch of other features as well. You've got different dimmer settings. You have got the ability to turn the volume down. So you've got volume adjustment, different alarm tones, and you've got different length of times for the snooze. There's a whole bunch of historical reasons that we've got a 9-minute snooze. There's no psychological reason. It was a technical reason they introduced a 9-minute snooze initially. So that's what every electronic device seems to have, is the 9-minute snooze. You hit snooze, 9 minutes. This has got an adjustable snooze time. Fantastic. But again, as we've worked out, you probably wouldn't need the snooze after you've hit your head on the roof when you've jumped out of bed. So it's called the Sonic Bomb Alarm Clock. If you really need to get out of bed in the morning, if there's something urgent, then go out and buy that, and that will get you up.
It comes with a bucket and a sponge to clean up the mess afterwards.
Probably.
Google took a shot at releasing the first smart glasses over a decade ago, and the response was nothing short of, underwhelming. They were billed as being revolutionary, but could not match the hype. But that was before AI came along, and the pairing of these two techs may be just the thing to bring this gadget to the front line of popular culture. Matt, it's time to get our Tony Stark on in a big way.
It is, actually. And you remember the Google glasses, because people that wore them were called glass holes. They weren't that popular. You've got Meta's Ray-Ban glasses, of course, smart glasses, and we have talked about those before. They've got the little flashing light on the front, so if I'm standing there talking to you, videoing you, maybe even streaming our conversation live, there is something on the front of the glasses flashing. So if you see someone having a chat to you and there's something flashing on the front of the glasses, be very, very careful about what you say. These have gone a step further. These are glasses called Ergo Vision glasses by Solos, S-O-L-O-S, and they've got the basic features that you'd see in the Ray-Ban glasses. They've got a camera on the front. They've got the ability to be activated. The camera can be activated for video or for photos. but they've got a little bit of AI built in and it can be voice activated. So I can be out there walking around, I look over and I wonder what that building is. My glasses can see that building. I say, what's that building I'm looking at? Well, that's actually the blah, blah, blah building. It was built in this year and away it goes. So it gives you information. And I love the idea because sometimes I'll be at an event and I'll be looking around and I look at someone and I go, I know that person. That face is familiar. Is that someone that served me coffee this morning, or is that someone I should know, or is that someone that played sport for Australia, or who is that person? And so I could subtly say to my glasses, I'm looking at a person now. Who is it? It'd give me the information. Oh, good. That is someone that represented Australia at the Olympics 20 years ago. Can you tell me what he did? Yes, he won a gold medal in this event. Oh, good. So I can walk over. G'day, Jimmy, how you going? That gold medal you won 20 years ago, man, that was a good event. So I thought that'd be a really handy use for them. But even tourism, when you go into some places around the world, I like going on e-bike rides or Segway rides with someone that's a guy that's a local, and you do a bit of a scout around the place you land at, and they'll say, this is a really important building and here's what happened here. And so you get a quick overview and then you know the places to go back and spend a bit more time at. But if you just turn up somewhere, you go past a building that might be of great significance and you go, oh, that's a lovely building, but don't realise the significance of it. And so I think something like this, putting the glasses on, looking at a building and then hearing a bit of the history, hearing what happened there, why that building might be important, or if it is just a lovely building with no significance whatsoever, I thought that was a pretty good use of it as well. So it's getting there, and the integration between wearable tech, we've got lots of information on our wrist with our watch, information like this on our glasses. I can just see that this is going to keep accelerating, and I like that idea of that information just there at our fingertips or our ear tips maybe.
And I wonder, like, I haven't seen this particular product, but I wonder if it just looks like a pair of normal glasses, because the Google glasses were very distinctive. And so hence the glass hole. Yeah.
Well, these look like, from the front on, look like an normal pair of glasses. There certainly is a little spot on the side, top corner of each side of it, where the camera is, a very small pinhole camera. And I assume these will have some form of flashing LED as well, because I think people are worried about privacy. The only way you really tell something's different is that the arms of them are a bit thicker than normal glasses, because there's a bit of technology building those arms. There's a battery in there, obviously. There's a little speaker that sits down near your ear, so when you're asking who is that person over there, you can get the answer back near your ear. So you look straight on, it's probably pretty hard to tell. Look side on, oh, those arms look a bit thicker than normal, but you have to be looking for that. I don't normally go and look at people and just turn side on for a second, let me look at those arms of those glasses. So you probably could pretty easily, not trick, but it would be pretty easy to realise, or to not realise someone was wearing a pair of glasses that were linked in some way to the outside world in a whole range of different ways.
And everyone can get to be one step closer to James Bond. Are you holding out on buying an EV because of recharge times? Too impatient for an hour's top-up, huh? Well, the list of excuses for avoiding EVs may be about to become one item shorter, with some new battery tech that'll make recharging more like a pit stop. It really was only a matter of time, wasn't it, Matt?
Well, I've got an interesting question here. It's been a long time since I've been to a petrol station and filled up, and I didn't ever think about how long it used to take me. You'd pull up there, sometimes you'd wait in line, you'd pull out the Bowser and muck around a little bit and stand there and hold it, and you can't pull your phone out and do anything because they get a bit antsy about that around petrol stations. So you stand there for a couple of minutes and look out at the horizon, and you finally finish that, and then you go inside and pay. I don't know how long that takes. Is it 5 minutes it takes you to go and fill up your car? Is it 4 minutes? Is it 7 minutes? I don't really know, but I would guess, if I had to guess, I'd probably say it's a 5 minute job to go and fill up, maybe a little bit longer than that. So when you say you've got to charge up for 15 minutes, people get a bit annoyed that it's that long to fill up your car. Now, as you and I both know, one of the great conveniences of an EV is that you don't go to a petrol station, you just plug in at home when you need to. But of course, on a trip, it's a little bit different, and that's where people complain about that. So progressing faster charging is very important. Nyobolt is a UK startup, and they've got a battery that they've just done some tests on and shown it off to the public, where they've gone from 10% to 80% in 4 minutes and 37 seconds, which seems like it's less than 5 minutes. That's not too bad. And they often talk about this 80% point that you want to charge to, because people would say, well, go to 100%. The last part of charge to protect the battery typically slows down. So if you're on a trip, you'd often go to 80% rather than 100%, and they often go from 10% because you're probably not going to drive till it's dead flat, the same as you don't drive your car till the petrol tank, the lights on, and I'll go another 30 k's and just see if I can make it. And no, I didn't make it this time. So you're probably charging from down around that lower amount. That's pretty good in terms of doing that. And when you consider the charge that you need to put in, this is the really tricky part, because if you look at how much that is, and of course 10% to 80% is all relative on the size of the battery. If you had a 200 kilowatt hour battery or a 50 kilowatt hour battery, obviously there's more power needed to get the 200 kilowatt hour battery to 80%. So a part of the problem here is that many superchargers, so Tesla superchargers, for example, and other company superchargers, typically at this stage are 350 kilowatt superchargers. And I did a quick calculation on that. And if you've got 350 kilowatts available for 10 minutes, that will add about 58 kilowatt hours. So again, if you had a battery that could accept that full charge, well, if it was a 58 kilowatt hour battery, it'd do that easily in 10 minutes. But if it's a 100 kilowatt hour battery, well, it doesn't matter how good the battery is, it can only get to 58% of that 100 kilowatt hours in 10 minutes. So part of the technology development is the battery, how fast it can accept a charge. That's certainly a very important part of it. But we're getting better, and there's research happening around the world. A whole range of different companies, different universities are really working on this. But the crucial thing then is, okay, that battery can now accept that. Now you need the infrastructure to be able to support that.
Bingo.
And you'll see various places where you're putting in superchargers, and you'll see almost a mini transformer, or there is a mini transformer there at the site, because they've got to get enough voltage there, enough power to be able to produce that power. It's not just, well, there's some overhead power lines, we'll just run those, the same as it runs into a house, we'll run those straight into a device there. You need something a bit different to change that. So that's all part of the challenge, I suspect, with superchargers. But you've got lots of companies working on it. And the other part is how much the battery degrades. So this company says, Nyobolt says, that after 4,000 cycles of charging, this battery is still giving you 80% of what it was at new. Now, to give you an idea of a comparison, a battery, an iPhone 15 battery, gets to 80% after about 1,000 cycles. And this is to have a go at Apple. All the phone manufacturers are similar. So you think about that, and most people charge their phone battery every day. So 1,000 charges, 3 years roughly. So after 3 years, you're down to about 80%. So you go, oh, well, that's okay. And maybe after 4 or 5 years, I'll replace my phone, or maybe I'll replace the battery. But when you start thinking about 4,000 cycles, and depending on how much you use your car, I probably only charge mine once a week on average. Sometimes I'll be a bit more active in a couple of days, but on average, I'll probably charge it once a week. So that's 4,000 weeks. That's 8 years. So after 8 years of average usage, I might be down to 80%. That sounds pretty impressive overall. So it's happening. Nyobolt's one. There's other companies out there as well. US startup called Gravity is out there. They're doing some work on it as well. Strathclyde University, they're doing some work on some other things with rapid chargers and upgrading the grid. So there's a whole bunch of different organisations and companies and universities working on battery technology and grid technology. For those people who, I'm sorry to say this, but for those people who think that this is just a passing fad, it's not going to happen. I'm not sure that's quite correct.
The competition is well and truly out there, and it's only going to get better.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Continuing on.
Facial recognition tech has given the upper hand to law enforcement agencies around the globe. A powerful watchdog that can spot and identify perpetrators, markedly cutting down time in administering the long arm of the law. But it would seem that the honeymoon is over, folks. The Detroit Police Department have been left with a bit of egg on their face with a wrongful arrest, and the implications could well be far-reaching. Matt?
They are far-reaching, and I'd love to see a detective show on TV go back and say, we're going to set this detective show in the 1950s, before we had CCTV everywhere, before we had DNA testing, before we had facial recognition, because it seems to me that most of the police shows, the crime shows, the fictional crime shows on TV, it's typically crime committed. Okay, get the CCTV, DNA, maybe fingerprints, but that seems a bit old now, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Facial recognition, 30 minutes later, there's the solution and there's the perpetrator of the crime, job done. What did you do before you had all that technology? You had to do some good old-fashioned police work. And that's a little bit what's happened now with the Detroit Police Department. They've got some new restrictions on their facial recognition. This all comes from a gentleman named Robert Williams, who was wrongfully arrested back in 2020 because there was some CCTV, they ran some facial recognition. Robert had a driver's license, an old driver's license, not his current driver's license, mind you, an old driver's license. And it was shown that this face that they had on this shoplifting was the same as the face on this old expired driver's license. So they've walked on in, arrested Robert in front of his family. Bit embarrassing, you'd think, wouldn't it?
Wow.
I've done nothing wrong. Of course you haven't, sir.
Yeah,
Everyone we arrest has
everyone's
done nothing wrong. I really didn't do it. And you can imagine the family and then the neighbours and all the rest of it. And then at some stage later it was worked out that actually he was somewhere else and it couldn't possibly have been him. So sure, you come back and say, no, wrongful arrest. I go, where there's smoke, there's fire. There must have been something you did. No, it just was that I looked a bit like this other guy who did something wrong.
Goodness
me. So a bit unfortunate and very unfortunate for Robert. So it's gone through a court process and the court has now said it's not a complete ban on facial recognition technology, but the police have been told they can't make an arrest based solely on facial recognition. They can't do a lineup based solely on facial recognition. This might be a way to get a lead. The same as you walk down the street and you talk to people and they say, actually, there's a guy in a red car and he looked like this and I think he lives up the road. That's a lead. So now they can get a lead from facial recognition, but they've got to have some other form of evidence to be able to then say, okay, we can now put this person in a lineup or arrest this person and start to go down that process, which seems reasonable.
Yeah.
It can still be used, but not solely used.
Well, I wonder how many correct arrests have been made solely using facial recognition compared to the ones that have been the misdiagnoses, the misreading.
That's right.
Look, if you were caught out as the person who's innocent, that'd be a terrible thing.
It would be terrible. And so they're now going to go back and look at all cases from 2017 when they started using facial recognition and look at all those cases just to see how an arrest warrant was obtained, whether it was just solely on that, and then look at the rest of the case to see if they've got anyone who the most terrible thing I think that could happen would be someone that's in prison who is really innocent amongst all the other people who say they're innocent, but maybe not so much.
They've been rattling that cage for however long saying, I'm innocent.
That's right. No one will believe me. So it's quite interesting as we talk about a lot. As technology progresses, sometimes legislation doesn't quite keep up. And this is one where retrospectively it's catching up to it, but it's not going to stop the progress of technology. It's just how we apply that in a reasonable way.
The development of Wi-Fi, atomic absorption spectroscopy and AeroGuard insect repellent are just a few of the clever gifts from our very own Aussie science and technology group, the CSIRO. They've been busily chipping away at the unknown for over 100 years, unlocking the secrets of how the world works and developing tech that have helped millions, probably billions, of people. In 2024, we're now at the stage where the level of data processing in the pursuit of science and technology is on an enormous scale. So the good people at CSIRO have enlisted the support of a new supercomputer, Matt.
It's actually not that expensive, this one. $15 million they've just spent on a new supercomputer. Yeah, which seems a bit cheap, doesn't it?
Bank.
Well, I've seen supercomputers where they've been worth 100 million, hundreds of million. We had that story we did a little while ago where there was a second-hand supercomputer for sale, which was picked up for not a lot of money, but that was a few years old.
So what you're telling me is these people are only just processing lots and lots and lots and lots of data, not lots and 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 lots of data.
Well, they could still do the second one rather than the first one. It would just be a bit slower to do that.
Right, okay.
But it is, you're right, CSIRO has got a great reputation for doing a range of things, and I like the fact that you just wanted to get the word spectroscopy in there.
I did. AAS for short, but it's a pretty cool piece of tech.
It is, and so we want our scientific base, our scientific, in Australian terms, one of the demigods of science in Australia, CSIRO. We want them to be able to keep researching and keep doing some great work. Well, you need some computing power to do that. So what are they going to do now? They've got this new $15 million supercomputer. And keep in mind, just to give you an idea of that, it's using 4th gen Intel Xeon scalable processors, but also some NVIDIA H100 chips. Those chips alone are $25,000 a pop. So it's still got some reasonable power in that, more than most people would spend on a small organisation spending on their server, their entire server. They were spending on individual chips. So you've got this powerful computer. What do you do with that powerful computer? Medical research is probably a big part of it. So you talk about when you're looking at, say, cystic fibrosis via MRI scans? Can you diagnose those better? So they're doing some work for some Queensland hospitals. When you're doing things like solar panels, vaccines, fire prediction, agriculture, when you're researching those, modelling. And I think that's the big thing. I don't want to say environmental is the main focus because people start jumping up and down about, oh no, all our money's being wasted on climate change, what a terrible thing, but it's pretty important in the whole scheme of things. But when you start talking about modelling, that's where a supercomputer can be useful. If we change this thing here today, in 10 years, what effect did that have? And here are the 1,000 variables that might need to feed into that. So you need a bit of reasonable computing power to crunch all those numbers to say at the end of it, here's our prediction. And that's when you get obviously some of the scientists around the world that say, if we don't reduce the change in temperature, if we can keep it below 1 degrees change in temperature, etc., here's what will happen around a whole bunch of other stuff. And there's some variables in there. You're talking about a planet with the variables around a planet. So you need some power to go and do that. They're going to be using it for robotics. They're going to be using it for trying to basically work out how we can get better things around health, manufacturing, agriculture, space, astronomy, and as I said, environmental modelling. So a whole range of different things there. If I'm a scientist at CSIRO, I'm going happy days because this is basically available to all of the research and engineering teams. There's 2,000 people potentially using this, but you would have to book some time in on this. You'd say, here's my model, here's what it looks like. I need to now go and put this into something that can crunch the numbers, not in a few years, but in a few minutes, hours, days, for example. So good to see, but I personally would like to see the government commit more money to CSIRO. I'd like to see more funds there. And let's not have a $15 million supercomputer, let's have a $150 million supercomputer and do these things even much faster.
Faced with a terrible shortage of guide dogs in China, a team of university researchers have leaned into technology for the solution. They've developed a litter of robotic guide dogs to aid the visually impaired. Another case of where necessity becomes the mother of invention. Slightly less cuddly, Matt, but also less poop to scoop, too, I would expect.
Yeah, less poop to scoop, but you're right, not as cuddly, but I think potentially cheaper than a normal guide dog. Now, guide dogs have got to be bred for a start. They start them very young, and then they've got to be trained. The cost to get to the point where you've got a guide dog ready to be given to someone who's vision impaired typically can get up to $50,000. So they're expensive to get there.
And they might not get to that stage
They might not get there, and then they're still a living dog, so they get old, they get older, they might lose some of their senses, some of their faculties, they might need to be fed along the way. So a whole range of things there. And I've been involved in fundraisers to get money for guide dogs for people, so it is expensive. In China, there is a problem. There are about 20 million people, almost the population of Australia, have got vision impairment. Of those 20 million, 400 have got a guide dog. So not really that many people catered for.
Yeah.
So some researchers at Shanghai's Jiao Tong University have come up with a 6-legged prototype, not able to be used yet, but it's basically a guide dog that's got cameras, it's got sensors, it's got AI built into it, it's got voice recognition. So literally you could hold onto it with a strap like a guide dog. You could say, I need to go to the nearest pharmacy, and it would take you along. It would stop at traffic signals like a guide dog would. It would guide you along that path. It uses 6 legs because they want to make it more stable. So at any point in time, 3 legs are on the ground. So you've obviously got a bit more stability with that. It's able to walk along, and people would recognise that it's about the size of an English bulldog. So it looks like a dog shape. It's not obviously a dog, but you might be able to wrap some skin around it at some stage and make it look a bit more like a dog. So I think this
could be cuddly.
It could be cuddly, that's right, in a very strange way. But the big advantage here is that the researchers believe once they get to the point where this has been tested enough and it's ready to go, it really is then just a manufacturing problem. It's not a breeding problem, it's a manufacturing problem. So we've got that prototype, it's now working, put it into manufacturing just like...
How many of these can we get out and how fast?
That's right, just like a car manufacturer. And then I would imagine it would be a lot cheaper than $50,000 to produce them once you start producing them at scale.
Yeah.
But also... You're talking about 20 million people in China alone. Well, that's in one country. I mean, a large country, admittedly, but you've got a lot of people around the world. So if China's got 20 million, you'd have to say probably around the world there'd be 60, 80 million people. There's obviously a market for this type of thing. Yeah. And if you can get to the stage where you can produce it quick enough and cheap enough, there's obviously a way to sell those. Similar robots are under development in Australia, under development in Britain, so it's not just the Chinese that are doing it. And I think you'll see these around maybe 5 years. That would be my prediction, that you'll see someone walking down the street.
All emotions aside, this is a pragmatic solution. This is a way to get around an issue.
And I think there's still a bit of stigma around a guide dog. When you see someone get onto a plane with a dog, it looks a bit strange. I was at a conference recently and there's someone with a guide dog there walking around into the conference centre, sitting around the seats, and you see a dog walk in. So it's something a bit different, a bit strange. I don't think anyone reacts badly to it, but it's not something you normally see, someone walking in with a dog, and it's obvious that it's a guide dog, but again, it's still a bit different. A restaurant, you see in a restaurant and there's a guide dog sitting in there. A robot maybe would be more acceptable in some of those sort of situations.
We take a lot of simple human tasks for granted. How you handle a bunch of grapes is very different to how you'd handle a can of dog food, which is very different again to how you'd handle a box of cereal, for example. But you'll spend next to no time thinking over that. For robotics engineers, though, these tasks represent a major challenge, and mistakes can leave an eggy mess not only on their faces. The clever kids at MIT have been teaching robots how to pack grocery bags, which you may think is small potatoes. But, Matt, this sort of machine learning represents a pretty big leap, am I right?
Big leap, and also a huge, incredible increase in efficiency. If they can get this right, and they're working on the way they can work out with pressure sensors. So this is all about the actual fingers, if you want to call them that, on the robot. When they pick up something, they've got pressure sensors there, and as they grip that, those pressure sensors start to push in to work out how rigid something is. So the grapes, as you say, you pick up a grape, they start to push in. Oh, that seems a bit flexible. I better pick up this very lightly because I don't want to grip it too hard. A canned food, for example, canned corn or something, pick that up, I squeeze it. Oh, I'm not getting any flex on that. This must be something that's fairly solid. I can pick this up much harder.
Well, I was thinking about this, and sometimes you've got, you pick up an egg. An egg's very fragile. Excellent example of something that if you just apply a little bit too much pressure, you've got a big mess to clean up. But eggs can have different sort of consistencies in their shell as well, and we detect that just by picking it up.
Yeah, we're pretty clever, aren't we?
We are.
Cleverer than we realise. And so here's the question. When you see something that you're about to pick up, so if I see grapes, because I know what a grape is and I know that it's softer than a can of tin food, do I automatically pick that up with a softer grip than if I pick up a canned food? Or do I, as I pick it up, realise as I'm picking up in that process, I'm actually doing some tactile sensing as I go? And it's probably a bit of both, but I would think that whereas humans are clever enough to know.
I think that there's been enough mystery boxes sort of experiments that the people have done either out of the name of fun or alternatively as a test where you stick your hands in a box that you can't see what's in it.
Right.
As soon as you touch it, you know how hard to touch it.
Yeah, okay.
How what sort of pressure you've got to give it.
Yeah,
and,
right. So they, presumably these RoboGrocery robots would be able to see and maybe identify, but also then as they touch it, pick it up, work out how hard to pick it up, and then away they go from there. The ultimate aim is that you can be sitting at home doing your online shopping, or in fact even turn up to the grocery store if you want and say, here are the 20 items that I need, and the robot goes and does the shopping for you and picks it up and brings it back. All about self-checkout. Maybe you'll get to the stage where a grocery store has no people whatsoever. You turn up at the front of the grocery store, punch in on a screen and say, there are the things I want, and you walk over to the checkout and there's the robot that's picked up all those things in a very quick time and it knows exactly where to go because I'm a bit hopeless at that. I go, where is that obscure thing that I wanted to get?
Grocery store's like an Amazon warehouse.
That's right.
Yeah, right.
May as well do it like that. Why not? So it could go straight to where it needed
Can
to.
it pick a good avocado, though?
Oh, that would be one where you want to get that bit of...
Yeah, it's got to be perfect, doesn't it?
It does, that's right. So that's one part of it, obviously, but the other part is that we do see more self-checkouts now, and that's been, I think, good in general. There's about 30% of all transactions at supermarkets now are done through self-checkout. So we're doing a bit of it ourselves, but this would be a next step to say just put the order in and let someone else go and do it for us and take advantage of the efficiency of a robot. But I do like the idea of sitting at home and just going through and suddenly the delivery comes. But
and it can be delivered by drone.
By drone, why not?
You are living in the future.
That's right, exactly. Yeah.
blurring the line between man and machine. If you're holding on to a hope that the distinction was always going to be clear, then you have not been paying attention, folks. Indeed, while some agencies are trying to help robots to think and behave like humans, Japanese developers, well, they seem hell-bent on getting their appearance just right. Having flexible faces to mimic human expressions has been a focus for some time. Well, now, ladies and gentlemen, for that perfect human look, they're now employing living skin cells to do the job. We're almost there, aren't we, Matt?
We are, and there's a whole range of robotics that I didn't know existed. It's called biohybrid robotics.
Sounds dangerous.
It does a bit, doesn't it? So as the name suggests, it's a combination. It's a hybrid. So it's taking the normal robotics we'd expect to see with mechanicals, with engineering, and combining it with living skin cells. So the skin's durable, it's elastic, it can express...
Has this been in a movie? Have we seen this in a movie somewhere?
Probably everywhere. It can express human-like emotions. It can smile. It can grimace. I'm not sure why it would grimace, but it could grimace if it wanted to. The whole idea...
When it's angry with you and it's about to attack you, it's going to grimace.
Good. Well, I don't want that robot then. And the whole idea is, presumably, it can improve communications by being able to express these emotions or some empathy. Again, you're probably being tricked. I know you're not angry, robot, but you're looking angry at me. What have I done wrong? This is this whole subset of robots with human-like features.
Work out how I plead with a robot not to damage me or my family.
Asimov. Go back to Asimov's law of robotics.
Yes, please.
So this is where Japan seems to have had a focus on robotics for a long time. I don't know that I can definitively say they're a leader across the world in robotics, but I feel like they are without any data to back me up. Maybe there's just a feeling there. But again, I think this is where we're headed. I think they're getting to the stage where robotics are getting better with the actual operation, but who's going to win the game? Who's going to be the company that releases the robot that everyone has in the home, that becomes the ubiquitous name for a robot, not a robot name? A bit like Vegemite is not Vegemite, it's yeast extract, but everyone says Vegemite. Who was going to be that company that has that particular product there?
Yeah.
And I think, here's my big prediction, some company out of Japan will be that company, and it may well be one that looks like a humanoid type device.
So your butler, your maid, your driver,
they're
going to look like a human. They're going to be part human because
right.
they'll have skin cells on them.
Skin cells. So it's not just looking like it,
maybe
is it?
not just skin cells, maybe other sorts of cells as well. Hey, maybe they'll get hungry and they'll need stomach, liver, pancreas.
Just talked about the robots for blind people where you don't need to go and feed them. So now you're telling me I have to feed them some dog food.
But this just sounds like another story from the end of days.
10 years I'm giving this one. 10 years before we'll see Rosie the robot around our place with some human-like expression.
It'll be fantastic, and there's only good news to come out of it, please.
We hope.
And just like that, we are done for another week, folks. There's a plus-sized lady staring through the window. She's dressed a little bit like Brunhilde, and she's warming up her vocal cords. So we need to get out of here fast. Thanks for another cracking tech talk there, Matt.
Well, we've got to get out of here because I've got the sonic bomb alarm set for 45 minutes. And if it gets there, we'll deafen ourselves.
Your family's about to get really angry with us. Well, I may just go and pick myself up a pair of them smart glasses. I've never been one to rush into things, and I reckon 12 years is long enough to hold out. And speaking of not rushing into things, I may just get back into building my doomsday bunker. Haven't made a great deal of progress just yet. It's just a square pegged out on the backyard with a bit of a string line and a welcome mat at this stage. So it's time to get busy. Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson is a homegrown podcast. Admittedly, a description that is really only meaningful if you live out here in the central western New South Wales. Otherwise, Tech Talk is an exotic production from lands far, far away. Either way, thanks for tuning in once again, folks. Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson is a pleasure to bring you each week, and we hope to bring you the next episode in another 7 days. And if you haven't already, hit the like or the favourite button and invite some friends to do the same. It makes us feel so good. See you next week.